The dust-laden wind whipped across Olivia Reed's face as she stood at the edge of Copper Creek, her hands trembling around the crumpled letter that had shattered her world just hours before. It was 1878, and the promise of a new life in this rugged Montana territory now seemed like a cruel joke, a joke that had cost her everything she'd left behind in Boston. "Miss Reed." The deep voice startled her from behind, and she turned to see Vaughn Zimmerman dismounting his horse, his tall frame silhouetted against the setting sun. The local rancher's concerned eyes took in her disheveled appearance, the small valise at her feet. "You're leaving? But you've only been our schoolteacher for 3 weeks." Olivia quickly wiped away a tear. "I received word today that my reputation in Boston has been compromised. The school board will hear of it soon enough." Vaughn's brow furrowed beneath his worn Stetson. "What kind of trouble?" "The man I refused to marry has spread vicious lies." Her voice broke. "He claimed I stole family heirlooms when I left. It's not true, but mud sticks, Mr. Zimmerman. I should move on before it follows me here." "Does the board know yet?" "No, but they will. These things have a way of traveling." She gestured to her small bag. "I can be gone by morning. I'll leave quietly." Vaughn took a step closer, his weathered hands reaching for hers. "Stay," he said firmly. "I'll fight for you, Miss Reed. Always. You don't even know me." "I know enough." His eyes held hers. "I know this town needs a teacher who cares enough to reach Billy Peterson after 3 others gave up. I know you spent your own money on books for the Matthews children. And I know what it's like when lies follow you." The setting sun cast long shadows across the valley as Olivia considered his words. She had nowhere else to go, no family waiting, and the thought of starting over again in another strange town made her stomach clench. "The school board respects you," she said softly, "but this is more than just gossip. Then we'll face it together." Vaughn's hand remained outstretched. "Let me help you, Miss Reed." After a long moment, Olivia placed her hand in his. "I don't know why you would do this for me." "Because everyone deserves someone in their corner." His smile was gentle but determined. "And Copper Creek needs its teacher." As they walked back toward town, neither could have known how the simple act of staying would change both their lives forever. The schoolhouse sat on the eastern edge of Copper Creek, a modest building of weathered wood with a small bell tower that Olivia rang each morning to summon her 23 students. The following day, she stood at her desk with renewed determination, though sleep had been elusive. "Good morning, class," she called out over the shuffle of feet and murmurs. "Good morning, Miss Reed." They chorused back, some with more enthusiasm than others. 10-year-old Jenny Lawson raised her hand immediately. "Miss Reed, is it true you're leaving town?" Olivia's heart sank. News traveled faster than she'd anticipated. "Who told you that, Jenny?" "My pa heard it at the saloon last night. Said you were in some kind of trouble back east." Before Olivia could respond, the schoolhouse door opened, and Vaughn Zimmerman stepped inside, removing his hat. The children fell silent, aware of the rancher's importance in their small community. "Pardon the interruption, Miss Reed," he said formally. "I wondered if I might have a word with your class." Surprised, Olivia nodded. "Of course, Mr. Zimmerman." Vaughn stepped to the front of the room, his tall frame commanding attention without effort. "Morning, children. I want to clear up some gossip that's been floating around town. Miss Reed is staying right here in Copper Creek. She's the finest teacher this town has ever had, and anyone saying otherwise will answer to me personally. Is that understood?" The children nodded, wide-eyed at his declaration. "Now, I expect each of you to go home and tell your parents exactly what I just said." His eyes twinkled with subtle humor. "Consider it today's assignment." After the children were dismissed for lunch, Olivia confronted Vaughn in the schoolyard. "You can't simply declare that the rumors aren't true, Mr. Zimmerman. They'll reach the board regardless. I've already spoken to them. He leaned against the schoolhouse wall. Told them you were being falsely accused by a jilted suitor. They're willing to give you the benefit of the doubt. Just like that. Olivia's voice rose with disbelief. Not exactly. Vaughn looked uncomfortable for the first time. I may have suggested that your character is beyond reproach, as evidenced by my intention to court you properly. Olivia gasped. You told them what? It was the quickest way to silence the gossips. He looked genuinely apologetic. In their minds, if the most eligible bachelor in the county their words, not mine vouches for you, then the rumors must be false. So now we must pretend to court? Her mind raced with the implications. Only in public, just until the talk dies down. He straightened. Unless you'd prefer to leave after all? Olivia considered her options. The thought of starting over again was daunting, and despite her outrage at his presumption, she couldn't deny the safety his reputation offered. Very well, Mr. Zimmerman, but we should establish some ground rules. His smile returned. I wouldn't expect anything less from you, Miss Reed. That evening, Vaughn escorted Olivia to dinner at the town's only restaurant, a modest establishment attached to the hotel. Every eye in the place followed them as they took their seats. Everyone is staring, Olivia whispered, uncomfortable under the scrutiny. Let them, Vaughn replied, unfolding his napkin. The more they see us together, the quicker your reputation will be secure. Mrs. Holden, the proprietress, approached their table with a knowing smile. Well, isn't this a lovely surprise? Our handsome rancher finally taking an interest in something besides cattle. Vaughn laughed easily. Miss Reed has been kind enough to accept my company, Mrs. Holden. And about time, too. The older woman beamed at Olivia. This one's been turning heads since he was 18, but never gave any lady the time of day. You must be special indeed. As the woman bustled away to fetch their meals, Olivia leaned forward. Is that true? You've never courted anyone in town. A shadow crossed Vaughn's face. I've had my reasons for keeping to myself. Which are? Perhaps a story for another time. He changed the subject skillfully. Tell me about Boston. What made you travel all this way to teach in a frontier town? Olivia recognized his deflection but allowed it. I wanted adventure, I suppose. My parents passed away 2 years ago, and Boston held too many memories. And the man who's spreading lies about you? Charles Whittington. The name felt bitter on her tongue. My father's business partner's son. It was assumed we would marry, but I never agreed to it. When I refused him, he didn't take it well. Men who feel entitled rarely do, Vaughn observed quietly. Their conversation flowed more easily as the evening progressed, moving from Olivia's life in Boston to Vaughn's ranch and the challenges of cattle raising in Montana Territory. By the time he walked her back to her small cabin near the schoolhouse, Olivia found herself genuinely enjoying his company. Thank you for dinner, she said at her door, and for everything else. My pleasure, Miss Reed. He tipped his hat. Same time tomorrow? She hesitated. Are you certain this charade isn't too much trouble? No trouble at all. His smile seemed to hold something back. Besides, there are worse fates than being seen around town with the prettiest schoolmarm west of the Mississippi. The compliment brought color to her cheeks. Good night, Mr. Zimmerman. Vaughn, he corrected gently. If we're courting, you should use my given name. Good night, Vaughn, she amended, testing the familiarity on her tongue. Good night, Olivia. He waited until she was safely inside before mounting his horse and riding away, his tall figure disappearing into the darkness. Over the next few weeks, their arrangement settled into a comfortable routine. Vaughn would escort Olivia to Sunday services, occasional dinners, and community gatherings. They were careful to maintain appearances while keeping appropriate boundaries. Meanwhile, Olivia's position in the community strengthened. The children adored her, and parents who had initially been suspicious now greeted her warmly. Even the most notorious gossip in town, widow Beatrice Fletcher, had taken to defending Olivia against any whispers. One crisp October afternoon, Vaughn arrived at the schoolhouse just as Olivia was dismissing her students. "Ladies," he addressed the older girls with a tip of his hat. "Mind if I borrow your teacher for the afternoon?" The girls giggled as they collected their books. 14-year-old Mary Porter spoke up boldly. "Are you going to marry Miss Reed, Mr. Zimmerman?" Olivia felt her face flush hot. "Mary, that's quite enough." Vaughn merely chuckled. "That's between Miss Reed and me, Miss Porter. Now run along home before your mother worries." After the children scattered, Olivia turned to him questioningly. "An afternoon ride? This wasn't part of our arrangement. Consider it an expansion of terms." He helped her into her coat. "Besides, there's something I want to show you." They rode double on his horse, Olivia seated before him, acutely aware of his arms around her as he held the reins. The proximity was unsettling in ways she hadn't anticipated, his solid presence at her back both comforting and disquieting. "Where are we going?" she asked as they left the town behind. "You'll see." The mischief in his voice was unexpected from the usually serious rancher. They rode for nearly an hour, climbing into the foothills that bordered the valley. Finally, Vaughn guided his horse into a small clearing surrounded by aspen trees, their leaves a brilliant gold against the azure sky. "Here we are." He dismounted smoothly before helping her down, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. Olivia looked around, confused. "It's beautiful, but what, this way?" He took her hand, leading her through the trees to where the land suddenly opened up to reveal a breathtaking vista of the entire valley. Copper Creek lay below them, a tiny collection of buildings nestled beside the river that gave the town its name. "Oh!" Olivia gasped. "It's magnificent. I found this place my first year here," Vaughn said quietly. "Whenever the world below gets too complicated, I come up here to remember what matters." Olivia turned to study his profile. "And what matters, Vaughn Zimmerman?" "Truth." His eyes met hers. "Honor. Keeping your word." She felt the conversation shifting into dangerous territory. "Is that why you're helping me?" "Honor. At first, perhaps." He looked back over the valley. "Now I'm not so sure." "What do you mean?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I think you know that this stopped being a charade for me some time ago, Olivia." Her heart stuttered in her chest. "Vaughn, you don't need to say anything," he interrupted gently. "I just wanted you to know that my intentions have become genuine." The confession hung between them, altering everything. Olivia turned back to the view, gathering her thoughts. "There's something you should know," she finally said, "about what happened in Boston. You don't owe me explanations." "I think I do." She took a deep breath. "Charles didn't just spread rumors because I refused him. He became obsessed. When I announced my intention to leave Boston, he threatened me. Said if he couldn't have me, no one would." The words came easier now, the secret no longer hers alone. "The night before I left, he broke into my home. I defended myself with a fireplace poker, struck him across the face. He'll carry that scar forever." Vaughn's expression darkened. "Did he hurt you?" "No, but he vowed revenge. The theft accusations were just the beginning. That's why I keep moving west. I'm afraid he'll find me." Vaughn stepped closer, his hands gently framing her face. "Listen to me, Olivia Reed. You did nothing wrong. And if this man ever shows his face in Copper Creek, he'll wish he hadn't." The fierce protection in his voice made something inside her crumble. After months of looking over her shoulder, the promise of safety was overwhelming. "I've put you in danger by staying," she whispered. "You've made this town better by staying," he countered. "And you've made my life brighter." When his lips met hers, it felt like coming home after a long journey. His kiss was gentle but certain, a promise made without words. Olivia allowed herself to lean into him, to accept what she'd been fighting against for weeks, the growing feelings for this honorable, stubborn cowboy who'd chosen to stand beside her. As autumn deepened into winter, Copper Creek settled in for the cold months ahead. Olivia and Vaughn's courtship was no longer pretense, though they maintained propriety for the sake of her position. He would visit the schoolhouse with firewood or escort her home through heavy snow, and she occasionally rode out to his ranch on weekends to share meals with him and his ranch hands. The Christmas social was the highlight of the season, and Olivia spent hours helping her students prepare recitations and carols. The entire town gathered in the church, which had been transformed with pine boughs and candles. "You've worked wonders with these children," Pastor Miller commented as Billy Peterson completed a flawless recitation of the night before Christmas, without a single stutter, a remarkable achievement for the boy who had barely spoken when Olivia arrived. "They just needed someone to believe in them," she replied, watching proudly as her students sang. The celebration continued at the town hall, where tables groaned under the weight of holiday dishes, and fiddle music encouraged dancing. Vaughn found her by the punch bowl, looking handsome in his best shirt and vest. "May I have this dance, Miss Reed?" He offered his hand with exaggerated formality that made her laugh. "I didn't know cowboys could dance," she teased, allowing him to lead her to the floor. "This one has many hidden talents." He winked, guiding her through the lively reel with surprising grace. Later, as they stepped outside for a breath of crisp air, Vaughn pulled a small package from his pocket. "I have something for you, an early Christmas gift." Olivia unwrapped the paper to find a delicate silver brooch in the shape of an open book. "It's beautiful," she breathed, tracing the intricate details. "Turn it over," he urged. Engraved on the back were the words, "For the woman brave enough to stay." Tears pricked at her eyes. "Vaughn, I love you, Olivia Reed." He took her hands in his. "I think I have since that first day by the creek, when you were ready to sacrifice everything rather than bring trouble to a town of strangers." She reached up to touch his face. "I love you too, and I'm so grateful you asked me to stay." Their moment was interrupted by the church bell ringing urgently, not the gentle toll that called people to worship, but the rapid clanging that signaled danger. Vaughn tensed instantly. "Fire," he said, already moving toward the street where others were gathering. Smoke billowed from the direction of the schoolhouse. "No!" Olivia gasped, lifting her skirts to run alongside him. They reached the scene to find the small wooden structure fully engulfed in flames. Men formed a bucket brigade from the nearby creek, but it was clear their efforts were futile against the intensity of the blaze. How did it start? Vaughn demanded of Sheriff Taylor, who was directing the firefighting efforts. "Don't know yet," the lawman replied grimly. "But it didn't start itself, that's for certain." As dawn broke over the smoldering ruins, Olivia stood in silent devastation. Everything was gone: the books she'd brought from Boston, the children's work, the small Christmas gifts she'd prepared for each student. Vaughn approached with Sheriff Taylor, their expressions grim. "We found something," the sheriff said, holding out a scorched piece of paper. This was nailed to the tree behind the schoolhouse. The note, though partially burned, was still legible. "Found you, Olivia. This is just the beginning." Her knees buckled, and Vaughn caught her before she could fall. "Charles," she whispered. "He's here." "I've sent riders to the neighboring ranches and towns," Sheriff Taylor said. "If a stranger's in the area, we'll find him." The town council convened an emergency meeting that afternoon. Olivia sat beside Vaughn as Mayor Wilson addressed the gathered citizens. "The destruction of our schoolhouse is a despicable act," the mayor declared. "But we will not be intimidated. We'll rebuild better than before." "And what about the person responsible?" Beatrice Fletcher called out. "What about Miss Reed's safety?" All eyes turned to Olivia, who stood shakily. "This is my fault. A man from my past has followed me here, bringing his vendetta against me to your doorstep. Perhaps it would be best if I left Copper Creek." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, but before anyone could respond, 12-year-old Billy Peterson stood up. "No, Miss Reed, you can't go. You're the best teacher we ever had." One by one, parents and children alike voiced their support, until Mayor Wilson raised his hands for silence. "It seems the town has spoken, Miss Reed. You belong here, and we stand with you against this threat." Vaughn rose beside her. "I have a proposition. Until we catch this man, Miss Reed should have protection. I offer my ranch as temporary housing for both her and the school. We have plenty of room in the main house, and the bunkhouse can serve as a classroom until we rebuild." Olivia stared at him in surprise. "Vaughn, that's too much." "It's settled then," Mayor Wilson declared, sensing the town's approval. "School will continue at Zimmerman Ranch until further notice. And Sheriff, I expect this criminal found promptly." As the meeting dispersed, Olivia pulled Vaughn aside. "You can't put yourself in danger like this. If Charles is willing to burn down a schoolhouse, what might he do to you?" Vaughn's jaw tightened. "Let him try. I meant what I said, Olivia. I'll fight for you. Always." The following morning, the entire town turned out to help move what little teaching materials had been salvaged to Vaughn's ranch. By midday, the bunkhouse had been transformed into a surprisingly functional classroom, with the ranch hands happily relocating to the barn for the duration. "It ain't exactly fancy," Vaughn's foreman, Hank, told Olivia as he helped set up the last of the desks. "But it'll keep the young uns learning." "It's perfect," she assured him, touched by the community's efforts. That evening, after Vaughn had shown her to the guest room in the main house, they sat by the fire discussing security arrangements. "I've posted men around the property," he explained. "No one will get close without us knowing. I hate that your men are missing Christmas with their families because of me." "They volunteered," Vaughn assured her. "You've made quite an impression on this town, schoolmarm." She managed a small smile. "Still, this can't be a permanent solution." "No," he agreed, reaching for her hand. "But I have been thinking about a permanent solution of a different kind." Before he could elaborate, hoofbeats pounded up to the house. Vaughn was on his feet instantly, rifle in hand, but it was Sheriff Taylor's voice that called out. "Zimmerman, you'd better come see this." Outside, the sheriff stood with a man Olivia didn't recognize, whose clothing suggested he'd ridden hard for many miles. "This is Thomas Jenkins, came in on the evening stage," Sheriff Taylor explained. "He's a Pinkerton detective." The man tipped his hat. "Miss Reed, I've been tracking Charles Whittington for 3 months. He's wanted in Massachusetts for multiple crimes, including arson and attempted murder." "Attempted murder?" Olivia echoed. "He attacked another woman who resembled you in Springfield," Jenkins confirmed. "She survived, but it led us to believe he's been following your trail west." "And now he's here," Vaughn said grimly. "Yes, but so am I." Jenkins handed Vaughn a folded paper. "This is his description. I'll need men who know the territory." 3 tense days passed with no sign of Charles Whittington. School continued in the bunkhouse, with the children excited by the adventure of lessons on a real working ranch. Vaughn arranged for one of his men to demonstrate roping techniques during their lunch break, much to the students' delight. On the 4th night, Olivia woke to the smell of smoke. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming of the schoolhouse fire again. until she heard Vaughn shouting from downstairs. "Olivia, get up! Fire!" She grabbed her robe and rushed into the hallway to find smoke billowing up the stairs. Vaughn appeared through the haze, a kerchief tied over his nose and mouth. "The barn's ablaze," he coughed. "And the bunkhouse. We need to get out." He led her down the back stairs and out into the yard, where organized chaos reigned as ranch hands battled the flames. The barn was nearly consumed, but they'd managed to get the horses out. The bunkhouse fire was smaller, already being brought under control. "Where's Jenkins?" Olivia asked, scanning the yard for the detective. "He and Hank rode to the north pasture earlier." Vaughn broke off as a shot rang out from the darkness beyond the house. Sheriff Taylor appeared at their side, gun drawn. "Get inside," he ordered. That came from the tree line. Before they could move, a figure emerged from the shadows, a pistol leveled at Olivia. Even in the flickering firelight, she recognized him immediately. "Hello, Olivia," Charles Whittington said, his voice eerily calm. An ugly scar ran from his temple to his jaw, the mark her fireplace poker had left. "Did you think I wouldn't find you?" Vaughn stepped in front of her. "Put the gun down, Whittington. The law's already closing in on you." Charles laughed, a hollow sound. "The law? I've evaded them across half the country. No, this ends tonight." His eyes fixed on Olivia. "You should have married me when you had the chance." "I never loved you, Charles," she said, finding courage in Vaughn's steady presence. "I never will. Then no one will have you." He raised his pistol higher. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Vaughn lunged forward as Charles fired. The bullet struck Vaughn in the shoulder, sending him staggering backward. Sheriff Taylor returned fire, but Charles had already ducked behind a water trough. "Vaughn!" Olivia dropped to her knees beside him, pressing her hands against the wound to stem the bleeding. "I'm all right," he grimaced. "Get to the house. I'm not leaving you." She tore a strip from her nightgown to create a makeshift bandage. From the darkness came Charles's voice again. "How touching. The schoolmarm and the cowboy. A pity neither of you will live to see morning." Another shot rang out, but this time from behind the house. Charles cried out in pain, his gun falling to the ground as he clutched his arm. Jenkins and Hank emerged from the shadows, rifles aimed. "It's over, Whittington," Jenkins declared, kicking the fallen pistol away. Dawn broke over a changed landscape. The barn was a total loss, though the bunkhouse had been saved. Vaughn, his shoulder bandaged by the town doctor, sat on the porch watching as Jenkins and Sheriff Taylor prepared to transport Charles Whittington to the county jail. "He'll stand trial in Boston," Jenkins assured Olivia. "With the charges against him there and here, he won't see freedom again." As the lawmen rode away with their prisoner, Olivia joined Vaughn on the porch. "How's your shoulder?" "I'll live," he said with a wry smile. "Though cattle drives might be interesting for a while." She took his hand. "You could have been killed. I told you I'd fight for you. I meant it." The ranch hands were already clearing debris, talking about rebuilding. Life would go on, Olivia realized. For the first time in months, she could look to the future without fear. "Before we were interrupted last night," Vaughn said quietly, "I was about to propose a permanent solution." Her heart skipped. "Oh!" He shifted to face her, wincing slightly at the movement. "This isn't how I planned it. I had a speech prepared, and I certainly wasn't going to be wearing a blood-stained shirt." He shook his head with a self-deprecating laugh. "But I nearly died last night, and it made me realize there's no time to waste." Reaching into his pocket with his good hand, he produced a simple gold ring. "Olivia Reed, I love you. Will you marry me?" Tears filled her eyes as she nodded. "Yes, 1,000 times, yes." Spring arrived with new beginnings. The schoolhouse had been rebuilt, larger and sturdier than before, with a small attached library named in honor of Vaughn's late parents. The barn at the ranch had also risen from the ashes, and the wedding preparations were nearly complete. On the evening before their wedding, Vaughn took Olivia back to their special spot in the foothills. The aspens were budding with new leaves, and wildflowers dotted the meadow. "I have a wedding gift for you," he said, handing her an envelope. Inside was a deed to the schoolhouse and the land it stood on, plus the adjacent lot. "I don't understand," she said, confused. "It's yours," he explained. "Independently yours, not tied to our marriage. No matter what happens, you'll always have a place that's entirely your own." She understood then what a profound gift. It was not just property, but freedom and security that no one could take from her. "Thank you," she whispered, deeply moved by his understanding. "There's one more thing." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a letter. "This came from Boston last week. Charles Whittington was convicted on all counts. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison." The final shadow lifted from her heart. "It's really over. A new chapter begins." He drew her close, his kiss a promise for their future. The wedding took place in the meadow where they'd shared their first kiss, with the entire town in attendance. Olivia wore a gown of cream-colored silk, with Vaughn's silver book brooch pinned to her bodice. He stood tall and proud in a new suit, the scar on his shoulder a badge of honor rather than a wound. As they exchanged vows beneath an arch of spring flowers, Olivia thought of that day by the creek, when she had offered to leave quietly, and this stubborn, honorable cowboy had asked her to stay. "I will love and cherish you all the days of my life," Vaughn promised, sliding the gold band onto her finger. "And I you," she replied, her heart full to bursting. That night, as they danced under stars and lantern light, surrounded by the community that had become family, Vaughn whispered in her ear, "No regrets about staying?" Olivia looked up at the man who had fought for her in every way that mattered. "None. This is where I belong. With you always." 5 years later, Olivia stood on the porch of their ranch house, watching as Vaughn taught their 4-year-old son Victor to ride his first pony. Their 2-year-old daughter Abigail clapped her hands in delight from her perch on Olivia's hip. The school had flourished under her continued guidance, with a second teacher now helping to manage the growing number of students. Copper Creek had expanded too, with a proper doctor's office, a bank, and even a small lending library that Olivia oversaw on weekends. "Mama, look!" Victor called out as he completed a circle on his pony, Vaughn walking alongside with a guiding hand. "I see you, my brave boy," she called back, her heart swelling with pride. Vaughn looked up at her, his smile as warm and certain as it had been that first day. In his eyes, she still saw the same promise to fight for her, to stand beside her, to love her always. And in that moment, surrounded by the family and life they'd built together, Olivia knew that sometimes the greatest courage wasn't in leaving, but in choosing to stay.